Why are brand standard manuals so important? First of all, they tell the company's story and they share their values. They break down when and how to use symbols or icons and details, the meaning behind them. They communicate the brand's voice and language. They tell you the do's and don'ts of the logo usage. They talk about how and when to use the logo palette, fonts, and photos. And they offer a central place for you to download their brand assets. These are going to be the most detailed document you'll create during this entire process. And I wanted to show you some examples of some that I found online that would give you an idea of how these might be a little bit different than what we just did. This is the LinkedIn brand and has a really awesome brand standards manual. And a lot of these that I'm showing are online. So they were able to create a web page or a landing page and integrate some of their images in there. So it gives them a chance to download logos as well and have links to resources. So that's one way to craft one, is kind of building a landing page and just putting on images, showing them how to use it, and then having a download button to download any kind of resources that they're going to need. We're going to create a PDF version, or I'm going to show you how to do that. But let's look at some of these examples. So this is LinkedIn. You have a chance to download assets. So they have different logo variations, and so our case that we're going to show all the different logo variations that they can use and supply them with files. We also want to make sure they have scale, so it shows the grid that we made up. We have all this done. We just need to kind of arrange it in the right way. Any kind of trademarking that we need to do, ours is not registered or trademarked, but that's something to think about. Here's one for Spotify. If you scroll down, you can kind of see the logo. You can download it. Icons, you can download it. Here's an exclusion zone, which is basically the spacing and margin that you want to have around the logo. That's more of a technical term for it, is exclusion zone. There's minimum size, so you can set how small you can make it, and you can't make it smaller than 20 pixels in width and all that kind of stuff. So you can get really, really nuts and bolts and very detailed. In our case, we're not going to get quite as detailed with usage, but you can do as many rules as you would like. Here's a good example of logo misuse. So don't use the old stack version of the logo. Don't apply a gradient. Don't rotate the logo. These are all very obvious, but you have to have at least a page dedicated to things you shouldn't do. Or focus very much on supplying them with the files, and you can say only use the supplied files. Don't use anything else, and then they won't be doing all this stuff to the logo. Just say you're not allowed to modify the logo. You have to use the files unedited. So there's lots of different approaches you can do for logo misuse. So they're presenting the colors, and they're also providing hex code colors. What I like about how this is online is if I'm a developer or I'm a graphic designer, I can go by and I can quickly kind of copy and paste this information because it's live text. If I were to just have a PDF of this version, you can also kind of highlight it as a PDF. So I kind of like being able to do that as opposed to a JPEG, which won't have live text or text I can highlight and copy and paste. So here's rules with colors. We already kind of did that a little bit earlier in the course, kind of some ways to use colors. They show lots of really good examples. And they have different icons and widgets, restrictions on naming logos. This is a very big company, so they're going to have way more details than probably we would for our little company. And this is one for Skype. And they did this as a PDF, so you can access the PDF by clicking on a link and it shows the PDF. So this is how we're probably going to end up doing ours as a PDF. So you can kind of scroll through it. And they have an index page because it's so massively long, and no, you don't have to make them this long, only if you're doing a big corporation. So it's talking about different versions of the logo. It tells a little bit about the story and background of the logo. So they have a print logo and a screen logo. These are different versions. They have a detailed version and they have a simple version. They're just showing you which ones those are. Do's and don'ts. They kind of, instead of having visuals, they just kind of talk about it with text. I kind of like having visuals. And there's the visuals. Good. I figured they would. So they talk about the typeface. They say what it is. What weights can you use? We've already done all this. We just have to put it in a booklet form. They even have an online typeface to use, which is WebSafe. And this is talking about their colors. So they have the primary colors and kind of a neutral color. So there's kind of spacing or exclusion zones around the logo. And here's kind of some brand voice, brand language. Let's talk. So these are kind of some international taglines. They talk about one of their assets, which is the cloud, how to use those brand assets. They get really intense about the clouds. How was the cloud made? And they have some golden ratio type things here where that's how they made up the logo. And it's also how they made up the cloud. And there's lots of ways to not use the cloud and ways you can use the cloud. So you can't have too much of a complicated cloud structure. You have to have it be simple. So this can get really nuts and bolts. They even supply you with illustrations, and you can download these illustrations to use. Let's check out another one. This is for Marvel, which does comic books, superheroes, movies. They do a lot of stuff nowadays. So this is their style guide. So this is their color scheme. So they're going to be able to copy all these hex codes. What I love about this is you can hover over it. You can copy the hex code and paste it. So if you're a developer, this is very handy, very nice. They even have all of their neutral colors, the UI colors, light and dark. If you go down, I like how they have a whole menu. So it's basically its own website. So they have menu options where they can cycle through typography and other options. So they list out their typography like we did before with our Montserrat and different font sizes. They're doing the same thing we did, but they just have a website version of it. So now that we had a chance to study what some other style guides are, there's so many different ways to do style guides. I can spend an entire class on style guides. We're going to do a more simplified version because our company is not a massive corporation. It's got limited use in terms of where it needs to go. So we're going to be pretty short with ours just to kind of have a quick example to work through. So with branding guidelines, I like to have a cover photo. So in this case, I kind of shown some correct ways to use the brand assets. So this circular version of the typography, we have this banner presentation kind of showing some good examples of the use in the cover photo. So not only is it a cover photo, it also acts as examples of how to use brand assets. And so this is what I like to do with my brand guidelines. I like to have just one page that really describes a history of the company, their goals, their missions, their ethos, everything we help to develop. I just want to have one page to really educate people on the company, not just when they were founded, but why they exist, what's their dreams and desires for their clients and customers, and who is their customer. So just usually 1 or 2 pages. You don't need to spend a lot of time on this. You just want to give them some general background so they'll help them use the brand and help to position the brand when they start to work with it. So in this case, I have a focus back on taste. And one of our favorite things about going out for some good sushi is the taste of raw fish. We love it, crave it. It's a part of our DNA. And you notice how I've written all of this. I've written it as I am the client talking to the viewer. So I'm not writing it as me as a designer. I'm writing it as I am the client. I'm speaking on behalf of the client. So I'm using I, we, us language. I'm not using other language where I'm the designer. I am speaking on behalf of the client. And that brings up a really good question. Who writes the copy and text for the manual? This can be written entirely by the client, or you can come alongside to help them write and craft their copy for the manual. You've spent so much time with them during the research phase and brand design process, you should be fairly comfortable being able to communicate and write this on their behalf. But help is always welcome. You could work with an editor or writer to help you if you feel like copywriting is not your gift. You can also have the client produce all of the written copy for your manual, and you just put all the details together.